Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Finding Nemo, featuring the voices of Albert Brooks, Ellen DeGeneres, and Alexander Gould, and many others I'll bring up in the show, directed by Andrew Stanton. Now, I was in junior high school, or about to graduate junior high school when this movie came out back in 2003. And I remember going to theaters with a friend of mine and my mother for this thing, and will it hold up like it will today versus back then in 2003? Let's get into it and let's find out. I have seen both movies before, so yeah, let's see how this goes. Marlin, voiced by Albert Brooks, is a clownfish and he gets an enemy with his wife Coral, voiced by Elizabeth Perkins, who I primarily know from the live action The Flintstones movie, as they have 400 baby clownfish in eggs until an eel comes by and off screen eats the eggs. I think it's an eel. Tell me if that's wrong. As well as kills Coral, and there's only one baby clownfish egg left, and Marlin decides to call him Nemo. And Marlin never wants Nemo to swim away in the middle of the ocean as a promise. And this opening is kind of dark, but I went with it. Nemo, voiced by young Alexander Gould, wants to go to his first day of school, and Marlin tells him about the sea not being safe, and they go to school. And when they arrive, we start getting some funny classic lines like, "All right, you kids, where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go?" As Marlin tries to tell some other fish parents as a joke about a mosque, and we meet some friends like Tad, Pearl, and Sheldon, and the animation is beautiful around the sea. And Pixar does a beautiful job with not just the animation but the dialogue, as it's really funny. And there's some classic lines I'll point out later in the show, like I already brought up with the "All right, you kids." Nemo goes with his teacher and friends near the drop-off, and the other fish look at a boat and calls it a butt, which made me laugh, while Pearl is tricked by going to the drop-off and says, "Aw, you guys made me ink," which is really funny, as Nemo touches the boat and gets captured by the scuba diver, let's call it. And I really like the characters throughout the movie, as we'll meet a whole bunch of characters while the scuba diver drops his mask in the ocean, while Marlin looks for Nemo and bumps into Dory, voiced by Ellen DeGeneres. And she shows Marlin where the boat went, and she forgets about it as she suffers from short-term memory loss. Which I kind of had that, I guess. She's a pretty clever character, as she has some of the best lines in the movie, in my opinion. Marlin and Dory meet a shark named Bruce, Anchor, and Chum as they go with the sharks, where they say a pledge: fish are friends, not food. And Anchor is voiced by Eric Bana, who I know because he was coming up late in that year with Ang Lee's Hulk, the same year as this movie came out. And they talk about their problems, and Marlin talks about how he's a clownfish, and they ask him to tell a joke about the mollusk joke, until he brings up Nemo because he sees the mask, and Dory tries to ask Bruce to read the mask and accidentally hits Dory in the nose. Bruce attacks, and while they try to escape, Dory says, "Who is it? I'm trying to come back later. We're trying to escape," which I say pretty regularly, which is the best line in this whole movie. And they get the mask and escape from the sharks as a missile blows up some bombs underwater, and the chase was engaging. Nemo ends up in a fish tank and sees a fish named Bubbles, voiced by Stephen Root, as he likes bubbles and worries about his bubbles and says, "My bubbles," which is again a funny line from Bubbles, and he's voiced by Stephen Root, the guy. Well, you probably wouldn't know this because this isn't a kids movie, but he was the guy that played Milton in Office Space, and he also meets Jacques with the great line, "Voila, he is clean," which I do sometimes say. It meets other fish like Bloat, Peach, voiced by Allison Janney, Deb, and Flo, and there might be others, I forget who, as Deb and Flo are sisters, and Gil, voiced by Willem Dafoe, as well as a pelican named Nigel later in the scene, voiced by Jeffrey Rush. who also had another movie come out the same year, which was Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. And the funny thing is from Disney, because this is a Disney and Pixar film. And I like the scenes in the fish tank, and as a lot of these scenes are, well, scenes and lines are hilarious. Marlin and Dory wake up with the mask and drops it while moving the submarine, and it goes down the darkness. And by the I'm talking about the mask. And Dory says, "Hey, Mr. Grumpy Kills," and comes up with a song called "Just Keep Swimming, Just Keep Swimming" as they go down. And Dory calls Marlin her conscience, or something like that. I forget what the line is. And they see a light as they hallucinate to an evil fish, and they find the mask and read it as it says P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, which is in Australia, and she quotes it for half the movie as they get out of peril. And I like the script coming up with clever things to say for half of it. Nemo joins the clan of fish and tank friends led by Gil, as they call him Shark Bait, for half the time after Nemo is in the fish tank, as he goes through the ring of fire. And he's successful, while the dentist has a niece named Darla who killed the fish for her present, and who was her present the year before. And Gil comes up with an idea of getting out of the fish tank into the ocean by making the tank filthy, and the plan is good until it happens later in the movie. Marlin asks Dory to leave him be after she repeats the mask again and again, until a fish school comes in to respect Dory and mocks Marlin while he's looking for his son Nemo. And eventually they give them directions to Sydney and find a trench that they have to go through instead of over, as they encounter some jellyfish, play a racing game of some kind, and some go through the jellyfish as they bump through the tops of jellyfish. And they get out and they get knocked out from the shock of the jellyfish. And I had fun with this scene, as this movie is fun from start to finish. Gil tells Nemo his first escape was trying to get in the toilet, as all drains lead to the ocean, which is clever. And Nemo goes in the tank to put a pebble in to make the tank dirty, as he tries to escape from the tube. Excuse me. And it's unsuccessful, as the running of the tank almost kills Nemo, and Gil briefly gives up meanwhile, or tries to permanently give up. Meanwhile, Marlin and Dory wake up with sea turtles led by Crush and his son Squirt, as they chat and swim with the sea turtles and have a fun time and have a chat as Marlin brings up the story of how he lost Nemo in the first place. And it goes around to everyone, including some pelicans. As Nigel hears about it, it goes to the dentist's office, while some seabirds say, "Mine, mine, 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 mine," all at the same time. And that's heavily quoted, as Nemo tells how sorry he is being unsuccessful, and Nigel says his father is looking for him. These characters are very memorable. After hearing Marlin is looking for him, Nemo puts a pebble in the machine and is successful, as Marlin and Dory get out of the sea turtle gap. And he asks Crush how old he is, because Nemo brought it up at some point earlier in the film, where this plankton says they live up to be 100 years old, but Crush says he's 150 years old and is still young. And these scenes are amazing to watch, as is this whole movie. Marlin and Dory swim to Sydney until they see a whale, and Dory tries to speak whale as they get eaten by one, while the fish tank is filthy, which is hilarious because Blow burps while eating their own filth, which made me laugh. Marlin and Dory try to get out of the whale by it sneezing through its sneeze hole, I think is what it is. I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head, so forgive me for that. And they get to Sydney thanks to the whale. And the next day comes, and Marlin and Dory get briefly eaten by a pelican named Gerald. And they stop at the throat, and Nigel helps them out, as Marlin says he's got to find his son Nemo. And Nigel advises them to hop in his mouth and he gets them to the dentist's office, while the dentist cleans the fish. And the fish tank, I mean, while the fish were sleeping, and Nemo almost gets taken by the dentist as he is out of the plastic bag. He is out in the plastic bag, and Darla arrives, and the cycle theme plays, which was hysterical, as Darla almost gets Nemo for her birthday, and Nemo pretends to play dead and is almost thrown in the trash can until Nigel barges in the office, which is hysterical. And Darla shakes Nemo like she did the other fish from the previous year. Nigel is thrown out. Nigel is thrown out, and Gil gets Nemo in the drain of water. And eventually the dentist puts him back in with the fish tank, where it'll lead to the ocean. And Marlin abandons Dory as he's depressed, and he's led to believe Nemo is dead, and swims back home, and Nemo is back to the ocean as he finds Dory and helps her out, looking for someone as she sees Nemo, and she sees Marlin in the background and goes back to remembering Marlin. Dory gets a crab confessing where he saw Marlin, where they swim to him as they reunite and almost get captured by some sailors. And Nemo saves Dory and tells the captured fish to swim down, and they get out of there successfully. And Nemo ends up alive after being almost killed with the other fish. And Marlin tells Nemo sea turtles live up to 150 years old, although he's still young, keep in mind. And they get home with Dory and Nemo going to therapy, and Nemo going back to school as we see the other characters we meet throughout the movie at the school, like the sea turtles versus the sharks, and the other fish laugh at Marlin's jokes. And he tells it better this time, and Nemo swims to Marlin and hugs him, and the movie ends with Gil and the other fish getting out of the fish tank, and they end up at the ocean with plastic bags, and credits roll with the tiny fish eating a bigger fish, with the light whom attacked Marlin and Dory earlier in the film. And the climax was absolutely thrilling, heartwarming, and that was a heck of a lot of fun. Let's see how it goes with the rating. I'll give this movie a 9.2 out of 10. I really like the characters as they're very memorable, and the writing is clever from start to finish, as there's a lot of funny lines that I sometimes quote endlessly, as the peril is amazing, and this is an amazing film to watch, and the animation is beautiful to watch, as the ocean looks amazing to look at in animation style. The casting choice is perfect in this movie, as I laughed from start to finish, as movie is quite a lot of fun and quotable, with some heart, and it has the best lines in any movie, in my opinion, which made me laugh the hardest. I can, and it still works great as it holds up 21 years later. The movie is beyond thrilling and heartwarming, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. At the end of the day, it's a beautiful film with the heart, and this is a strong recommendation that any kid has to watch in their youth, as it has the greatest lines ever that kids and adults can quote to even this day. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Finding Dory. And until then, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, 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 swimming.